let's talk about what's happened with USAID. He called it a criminal organization without evidence and wrote that it was time for it to die on X. He tweeted this week that we spent the weekend feeding USAID or USAID, I call it USAID, into the wood chipper. Why do you think he is so focused on USAID? I know some of their programs are questionable, but the vast majority, their budget is spent on soft power, doing really important things for countries all over the world, eradicating AIDS in Africa, so many other things that they're helping developing communities, et cetera. USAID critics have pointed out that some of the programs seem to be wasteful. And to your earlier point, Vittoria, like there are wasteful government programs, but to full scale just abolish it seems a little crazy to me.
I try not to project what other people may be thinking, so I can only guess. But what I would say is a couple of things. One, in Project 2025, USAID is a target of wanting to collapse the agency. And so I think there is sort of broad backing for that amongst the sort of Musk, Trump, MAGA, tech right coalition. And secondly, I think, I used to work in international development, and so
Right.
I do know a little bit about this. And one of the things is foreign aid is often something that sounds really unpopular to the average American because it's often billed to the average American as like, we could be funding your schools, but instead we're sending, bed nets to someone in Uganda. And the reality is that if you look at the US budget,
Right.
less than 1% of our budget goes to aid. So it would be like rolling up to the airport with an overweight suitcase and being like, I think I should just take out my underwear. Like, it's just not going to solve the problem. But when you break out those numbers and say, well, we've sent $100 million worth of XYZ to this place, $100 million is a lot to me. It's a lot to most Americans. And that, without that context, can be pretty frustrating and enraging. It can feel very unfair. And that is something that I think Musk and Trump and, politicians for actually decades have really hammered in on, where they don't offer that context of how small of our budget that actually is. And I also think that, for a lot of Americans, part of the gift of having a functioning government is that you don't have to think about all those things all the time. You're supposed to be able to trust the people that are working for you to make good choices. But I think, that eroding sense of trust means that when people hear stuff like that, they're like, of course that's wasteful. Of course it's stupid.